Welcome to the Music Wide Open podcast
The place for an honest and thought-provoking conversation
about music,
business,
life,
technology,
and the future,
for curious music enthusiasts.
and musicians seeking personal growth. I'm Ingolf Wunder.
And I am Paulina Wunder. The profession of musicians seems obvious to us. It seems like it's always been there and always will be. We don't really think about what it meant to be a musician, what it means now, and what it will mean in the future. We humans tend to be short-sighted. Therefore, somehow, perhaps subconsciously, we assume that this profession as we know it will remain cemented in its current form. In other words, you go through and will continue to go through a certain educational path. You have and will continue to have the same requirements to achieve the success you desire. And the music business has and will continue to have the same structure. But none of this is true because nothing is constant, everything is changing. It always has been, including this profession. And sometimes the changes are coming much quicker than expected. Therefore, I would like to talk about musicians of the future.
Yeah, before we start with the future, it's maybe good to look into the past. As you said, musicians or the profession of a musician wasn't always the same. It's actually changed constantly. In ancient times, musicians were often part of religious or royal life. Temple musicians in Mesopotamia or Egypt played for gods and kings. In ancient Greece, music was part of a good education, and skilled performers had status. In Rome, for example, musicians were often looked down on if they performed for money. Music was valued, but musicians weren't respected. And so we go on. In the Middle Ages, church musicians sang to worship, while minstrels and troubadours roamed the streets and courts with songs and stories. Some were praised, others were distrusted. So from the Renaissance on, we kind of, when we look back now, we think like, okay, that's our times. And musicians were working for nobles and the church. It gave them stability, but they were mostly seen as servants. Only the most brilliant, maybe Vivaldi or people like that, gained fame beyond their employers. And in the classical era, we start to see musicians break free. Yes. Mozart tried to make this as a freelancer.
Yes.
Beethoven was one of the first to live off public concerts and publishing only. And this started the shift sort of from the servant to the independent artist. And then
sort of independent.
Sort of independent. In the Romantic period, then Liszt and Paganini were the first music celebrities. And by the 20th century, recordings and radio technology created global stars off classical paths, the Beatles, Armstrong, and so on. But in the classical field, there were stars too, of course, Karajan and co. And but something odd happened because there was a split, because, you know, classical music from the Romantic period, it became then sort of serious music, while other music became entertainment. Which is funny because, you know, in a spiritual sense, it's, in my opinion, good because we are looking for something like serious, spiritual, right? But unfortunately, that label has been misused so uncountable times that, yeah, we are here where we are.
And on the other hand, all music, whether people like to hear it or not, is entertainment.
Yes, I believe so. Entertainment, of course, on different levels of sophistication or of sensory abilities. And therefore, in these times, the label serious music and entertainment music sort of was fitting because many of the artists of these times when that label was created are in fact really spiritually amazing. Just it isn't anymore like this on average. But the fact remains that technology and the recording age actually created that kind of picture of an artist that we have now, of a musician, right?
Not so long ago.
No, not at all.
I think here we maybe should make a quick recap of the history of recordings, because it's pretty important because of this technological side that then was changing and is changing. And this history of recordings shapes, in a way, the profession of musicians.
Absolutely. Because the whole idea of recording music completely changed the industry. Before recordings, you wanted to hear music, you had to be there, in the room, with the person. There was sort of this magic moment, this unrepeatable thing that I still very much look for in music. But then suddenly with a recording, you could freeze the performance.
Yes.
And copy it and mass produce it for the first time.
But the first recordings of music in terms of sound capturing were made in the late 19th century. And the first disc records for sale, so commercially produced, were soon after. And then we have a very important period for records generally, the 50s and 60s, that are the golden age of vinyl records. After that, they started to decline. But this is a pretty important period between 50s and 60s, and how many as well artists became popular in that time.
It oddly coincides with Karian's timeline.
As well, of course, but even more afterwards, because then we have another important peak, the late 1980s and the rise of CDs, with the sales peak around the year 2000. And after that, CD sales began to decline, obviously influenced by the rise of MP3s. And what's incredible, actually, that between 2000, so not such a long time ago, and 2007, CD sales dropped by almost 50%. And in the recent years, they've fallen by 95% compared to their peak. So they don't sell anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, from the year 2000, we have digital formats. First MP3s, and then streaming, which took over probably around 10, 15 years ago and continues to grow. It definitely dominates, it grows, but has not yet surpassed the peak global physical sales revenue of the late 1990s, so the CDs. So here where we are, technology influences musicians' paths a lot.
A lot. And it gave us the legacy and history that we have now that hasn't been available to any musicians of the 19th century or earlier, of course. Sometimes this is for the better, sometimes not. And I've been there myself, the pressure of a recording artist to make something like timeless or the best, even though something like this isn't really existing, is enormous.
I would say that it's not even applicable anymore because we live in times of quick consumption.
Yeah.
And it's because digital formats are somehow, sorry to say that this is how I see it, less personal. And we are now in that digital formats era. And obviously on top of that, they are less material. You can't put them on a shelf and admire them. You jump from one file to another without the same attachment as one had to physical records.
Yeah.
It also, in a way, influences the musicians, how they are seen, treated, I believe.
By the algorithms of people or whoever.
By the algorithms, yes, because now it's all about paid subscription. So you pay, you sort of own the music that you want and the music that you don't want. You get everything in a package. And then you stop paying, you don't have anything left really.
And then you get everything for free on YouTube anyway.
And then on top of that. So that's why the technology keeps influencing the life of musicians much more than one thinks.
Absolutely. And it's also becoming a attention hunt. I mean, because there's so much in the market, short form, long form, it's so much that you never, ever, ever could listen to everything. Well, the attention spans Some say it becomes shorter. Some say, okay, there are so many long form podcasts and stuff like this.
We were talking about that in one of the episodes.
Yes, and on top of that, in this digital age, anyone can sort of become a musician.
That's true, and we should go into this because that's an important chapter, a new chapter that opens.
Absolutely. It was never like this in the history that we know. Maybe it was once thousands and thousands of years ago, but in the known history it wasn't like that. So that a musician has to become or has become a creator, a marketer, a performer all at once, and sort of, content creator or whatever it's called, although it's terrible because there are content creators who are really terrible and some are really great. But, the ratio is probably as everywhere else.
Yeah.
And the enabler of such transition of musicians is, again, technology. These are tools that enable people to do something they have never been able to do before.
Yeah, and they are getting better and better. And I would like to here say something controversial, maybe not really, because we human beings believe in our superiority for centuries. We're used to thinking we're supreme. Animals are not as capable as we are, not as conscious as we are. We are the creators, the thinkers, the doers, inventors. So we rule, we are superior. But we've never been before in a situation we are now. We've been working on technologies that now seem to get, in a way, out of control. And as many smart people predict, these technologies might pose a real danger to humanity. And the question is not whether it happens, but when. Yeah. Is it 50 years, 10 years, or 5 years? Nobody really can answer that. But it can be sooner than we think. And the main reason why things will go sour for humanity, I think, is our ignorance and arrogance. We are incapable of regulating the law. We are regulating the law in all possible, often idiotic ways.
And way too late.
And way too late, that's right. But those ones that are slightly idiotic, we are doing pretty quickly for whatever reasons. But we are incapable of regulating technological laws. Just because such a regulation would mean for these big tech companies more problems and less money. And they want growth. They want dominance, and doesn't matter what price humanity will pay for it. Yeah,
and of course the problem of the rule of law or the regulation attempts of AI in different countries is not making it easier. The EU tries to regulate everything. That's why they don't have any real innovation going on. While US and China absolutely do not regulate it. Okay, maybe some people are aware of the threat that you just talked about within the highest people of these companies.
Yes, but not the population, I think.
And so there are attempts to make it safe or safe superintelligence. There's even such a startup, I think. But whether this will work or whether in this arms race people will actually be able to control themselves or be able to do the right thing is very doubtable.
Yeah, and on the other hand, the population, because I mentioned it, doesn't protest because we, as a whole, we feel superior.
Yes, and always we are always too late in this. People do not see threats until it's absolutely in front of their eyes, and then they say, "Ooh, how could that happen?"
But I also think because we create the technology doesn't create us. And yes, and probably that's the reason, But yes, but it actually can already create itself in a way.
Yes, in the technology first attempts, or maybe it's even under the hood, even much further than we know. But yes, ultimately it will be self-replicating code, and then the sky's the limit. I mean,
yes, which would have as well some repercussions for musicians, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, alone now they already forecast that in 2028 the average loss of income for musicians will be 25%.
Loss of income.
Yes, but this is probably very nicely calculated already, because if you see what's going on in other fields, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. On top of that, of course, I don't know how they made this prediction, 25% less. It might be as well connected to the fact that the global entertainment robots market, which covers robots used in music, this is another layer, right? Not only AI, but as well robotics, is calculated at almost $5 billion US dollars in 2025, and it is predicted to increase to approximately $27 billion by 2034, so 9 years.
Robots are already part of our, it always goes in stages, right? I just was at Zurich Airport this afternoon, and there are cleaning robots.
Of course, yes.
These were humans that did that job just recently.
Yeah.
And it will come to musicians as well. Of course, musicians will work with the AI, and actually this is what they quoted at this prediction, that due to this, that's just much easier to do music now.
Yeah. Well, I started with robots, of course, maybe that's a wrong angle to start with. There are other things like the tools, but since I started already, of course, there are already some robots playing the piano, and it's not just a probability, it's already a reality. Of course, it's laughable
at the moment.
But even this year, there were multiple demonstrations of humanoid and non-humanoid robots playing the piano independently and as collaborators, actually in duets with humans.
Yeah, this will come.
And these robots use advanced AI, machine learning, and dexterous robotic hands to perform music on the real acoustic pianos.
Yeah.
And they are, what's even more important to underline, I know it's still funny because I cannot imagine still pianist robots to be treated seriously.
But many humans look already like that.
That's another thing, yes. You could just think that they are covered with some silicon skin or whatever else, artificial skin, and this is basically
it.
But some yes. But these robots, that's why it doesn't look so good for some musicians, are being programmed not only for technical accuracy, but for expressivity and creativity. So these people that work on them think about these more artistic layers as well. And there's lots of money that's going into this sector as well.
And one very important question is, you mentioned creativity. We have mentioned that multiple times in this podcast, but it's really a time in the human's evolution now where we have to actually ask these questions. What is creativity? Where is it coming from, etc.? Because we are very close to, there are many buzzwords like super intelligence or AGI or whatever it's called. It's all anyway an umbrella term for a machine or billions of machines that are more intelligent than the whole of humanity together. Of course, this is something that some people say it's still some time away, as you said. AI is powerful today. It can mimic styles, analyze trends and all this stuff. But ASI would go far beyond.
So super intelligence.
Yes. Outthinking and out-creating humans entirely. But it's still theoretical, of course. In the next 5 to 10 years, AI will likely become more general. So it means that it can combine fields. And it's not excelling only one field, but it combines those fields and excels everywhere, putting things together like we do, right? Just they can compute much more per second than we. But the big question I'm asking is, we are trying to create a better version of ourselves or whatever, a better version of our brain or our capabilities and stuff, which is of course very dangerous. But still, for the music angle, it always comes to what people look for. Don't forget...
You mean creators or listeners?
Listeners, actually. Because for a creator that has a clear vision or that is maybe exceptionally talented in some way, you always can get some pleasure out of what you do because you know exactly what you want to reach, and then your sensors kind of go crazy when you reached it, right? But if the audience that you actually make the art for, if their expectations change, That's the danger.
But that's another thing. But I will surprise you here.
Okay.
The other day I asked an LLM, so large language model, what music-related topics do users ask about the most? Of course, LLM cannot tell me in detail because of the privacy and so on, but it can say something. And the answer was some basic things like music gear and equipment and AI tools for musicians for composition and for inspiration. In other words, the most asked questions are not about some educational stuff in music or what makes music good, but how can I create without being creative?
Yeah, but this is what I meant. People will not see the danger before it's in front of their eyes and then it's too late.
No, but you see, where we are.
I know.
So
this is the wrong question.
So what is creativity? What is our human creativity?
But this is sort of what I meant, because what I meant is like the expectations of the listener.
We are lazy.
Of course. And the expectations of the listener is being shaped by what it's being fed. And it will be more and more fed with generative AI ideation tools, with composition tools, which sort of have an underlying algorithm that is not yet super creative, like
yes.
It's not outperforming the best humans at all yet. It might once, but it doesn't yet. But if the listening habits or the consuming habits, let's put it this way, are so shaped in one direction, that's a problem, because it's kind of the whole.
But you see, I think it's directly connected with this, that we feel superior. Yeah. That we feel, no, human is the best and we can determine what's the best and so on. And I will give another example. It's not music related, but art related, and because that's pretty interesting. I think it was in 2017. There is an institution called the Art and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at Rutgers University, which focuses on research at the intersection of artificial intelligence and the study of human creativity. So this is what we are talking about. And they held an art exhibition and a survey. And imagine, 75% of people thought AI create paintings were human-made. It's pretty incredible. And among those recognizing AI paintings, 56% enjoyed it. But what's even more surprising is that people preferred unlabeled AI-generated, so they didn't know that it's AI-generated art over human art. And only when people were shown art labeled AI,
they didn't like it.
Then the bias emerged. Yeah. So it's pretty confusing.
It's pretty confusing. But on the other hand, we have a banana that is millions of
yes.
dollars worth that was eaten. Like, what is art in the first place, right? I mean, we are here. This is the problem.
Somebody liked this banana very much.
I mean, the problem with humans is generally that we are completely reckless, that we haven't answered the basic questions at all, and creating something that potentially...
Let's face it, we are pretty stupid.
Yes, as a race, absolutely. Because we should rather first answer basic questions and then create the technology that might all erase us. But we don't do it. We just go on with developing because it's so cool to have it create pictures or music.
And we are unbeatable, so nothing can destroy us.
And all that is anyway based on science that is limited by the visible light. But this is another subject.
Yes.
But let's go back to the tools, because you mentioned
yes.
There are, of course, loads of tools already.
We mentioned already some.
Yeah, but there are more
episodes.
and more. Like, I could go on and on. Backbone, samplet, play phrase, weights, GG, vocal conversation,
like
AI. Like you cannot even, these are all tools that actually help creators, music creators, to create better, whatever it means, music. And I know it for a fact, even there are YouTubers openly admitting, although they probably don't even think about it as an admission, that they are using, as you said, AIVA or Music LM or whatever, or Suno or whatever it's called, to actually compose a melody for them or music for them, and then they just put it on their MIDI keyboard into, and sorry that I make such a sound because it's not about the MIDI keyboard. The MIDI keyboard is great, but if it's used by people who are not so good, then it has a bit of an undertone for me. So they put what the AIs give them, put it in Logic or whatever, and sell it as their own creation.
Yes.
And
we've talked about that as well.
I know,
previously.
but this is growing so rapidly that you can basically literally find for anything.
Yeah, people don't feel ashamed even.
That you can. So in other words, people will outsource their brain.
Yeah.
It just will happen. And there are studies actually that is quite shocking. I forgot which university did that, but it was like this: that people used LLMs to write a text. And then used their own brains to write a text.
Wow.
And the fact was that after using the LLMs for writing the text, their writing skills without LLM became much worse because the brain already expected the input from because we are so quick in adjusting.
Yes.
The same thing is with what you mentioned with the people like art, but there's another study that looked at how AI can actually persuade people. And it was shocking, 60-70% of people were actually persuaded by the LLM that the LLM is right. Yes. Even sometimes it wasn't. So it's very easy for us humans to give away the superiority actually. Yes. Although we think we are still superior, but we trust so much because we think, okay, they can compute billions of things per second, I cannot, therefore it has to be right. Wait, it is often right, but it's not always right.
Exactly. Okay, but let's go back to musicians, maybe to instrumentalists, because that's interesting how their profession will be changing.
Well, again, I think it really has to do with how the market will shape. In that sense, what listeners will be willing to do or not to do. Like, will there be live concerts all over the place because people will actually go away from the AI generated things that they will have on Spotify, everything similar anyway, so we actually want a human on stage and we have a sort of a revival of live performances? Or not? Or will it be a robot, as you said, will come because they will do it for sure, but will people actually go to a concert where a robot is playing?
Well, I could see such a thing. Look, when we were recording episode Artificial Intelligence and Musicians, and I mentioned robots there. Not that I am obsessed with robots, but it's an interesting subject in a way. And I mentioned something about robotic hands. A human hand has 27 degrees of freedom, so how the joints move and everything. And back then I was not aware, I became aware just after recording that episode back then, that there is already a robot that has 27 degrees of movement, of freedom. And it's pretty fascinating because although it's not being created for music purposes, but the application can be as well for music in the near future. It's not yet a consumer product, but these robots are developing quickly, and it might be in 1-2 years as well on the market, and then in a couple of years as well in the music field in a way. But why am I saying this? Because this robot doesn't look like a normal metal robot. It actually, all the muscle constructions are being recreated according to the human anatomy, and as well it's not covered by metal, but it will be sort of an artificial skin. So imagine such a thing, for example, in 5 years or 7 years. Let's say capable already playing something, and it looks cute.
Plays amazing because
it looks cute. It's super, technically it's super fast because it can do absolutely all the movements. It's very skilled. And then let's say someone with some musical mind or some musical understanding works with such a robot, and actually this robot starts to comprehend with his super intelligence how to actually make a good interpretation. I'm pretty sure people would, first of all, out of curiosity, they would go to such concerts. And then after that, it will be, oh, actually, it's so cute, it looks so cute, and it plays so amazingly.
Yes, because we humans
good.
we can create an emotional relationship with a lawnmower.
Exactly, you put two eyes on it, and it's like already.
And it's so cute because it's happening in us. That's so cute. It's not coming from the object, but it's what you feel about this object, right?
We have two cleaning robots, and I catch myself sometimes, asking the robot, "Where are you going?" So it looks still like a normal cleaning device.
Yeah, I think it's pretty certain.
So now imagine a robot, a real humanoid.
I think it's pretty certain that people will like AI-generated music. The question is just if such humanoid robot will be then actually become a star and will actually realize that it's so famous and react accordingly, because the super intelligence is that it can actually reflect on itself. So we are creating, or we want to create, just a Frankenstein. I mean, kind of our image, right?
But they work on super intelligence, so it's a fact, and whether we like it or not, it will.
I know. One more subject coming to mind is if musicians will feel disheartened by AI speed. Like, will we stay motivated if a machine can write songs overnight or can play, as you say, amazingly on stage in form of a robot? Well, why even try, right?
Because of course some people will say now that a human being always needs and will always need to create, to express themselves, and there always will be those who want to play an instrument, and it will be the case, obviously.
Yeah, for private use, for sure.
But there will be.
But will you be able to compete? See, because some people, artists, not that music is a competition. It's actually not it's not a race. But in a way, humans want to always be better, right? I mean, even Mozart wanted to be better than Haydn, I presume, and Beethoven wanted to be better than Mozart in his.
But to compete against other human beings.
Exactly, and this is the question, whether you will be...
And it's okay then, because you have the same chances in a way, let's say. But if someone, for example, if you as a 100% human being is about to compete against someone with
super intelligence,
or with someone who is some kind of implantable, then that's not even.
But then it's the question, as I said, if the motivation...
So do you stay motivated, or you just, no, it's not for me, I give up, I will do something else?
This is the question. I mean, nobody can really answer for sure, obviously. I don't know. I think on a certain level, people will just then go with the technology and create something with the technology in tandem or something.
Yeah, because how to exclude such a person? Let's say you have such a person with an implantable. Or a humanoid robot. Okay, one can make a law like no humanoid robots are allowed here and there, but you see how difficult it is to create any law. We are having problems with regulating sports alone, with genders and what's allowed, what's not, who is allowed where, and so on. So now imagine I'm a human being, I look like a human being, I just have a chip in my brain. So do I have the same rights still, or and then you have a humanoid that...
Or there might be simply two classes. I mean, in chess, it's like that, right? That's. I mean, I don't know anything about chess, but I presume, since I read the book of Garry Kasparov, that no human being can. Okay, now I heard that Magnus Carlsen actually beat ChatGPT, I think, in chess or something once. I don't know much about that, but basically, it's the fact that a human cannot beat a computer in chess over a long period of time. The computer will always be better because it's a finite game.
Yes.
Now, LLMs or AI systems start in 90% of the cases, something to master the game Go, right? Where you think one needs reasoning or whatever. My point being that maybe such classes of robots or half machine, half human will create classes such as, okay, that's the only human leak, that's the only machine leak,
Yes.
and that's the hybrid leak or something. But then it's the question, each of these leaks will have their own public, or how is
Yeah,
it,
that this is-
or will machines be the public? Will will bots and other LLMs be the listeners? And then I have no idea how such a future will actually look like. But the scary thing is that it's not that far.
If we human beings don't become numb in terms of our recognition, I mean, we are already, because I mentioned this art example.
Yeah.
So, what do we like really?
Well, there I cannot not repeat something we mention so often because it's really, really important. This highest level music, I don't call it understanding, but feeling, this emotional delivery of music that is lost so often nowadays, and on average really low compared to 50 years ago or 60 years ago. This is a key, in my opinion, because if we don't, again, root causes, if we become more like robots will replace us. Even in a super intelligence case, even more so, because they would not even, as Hinton said, right? I mean, if you want to know what it's like to not be the superior being on the planet, ask a chicken. I mean, this will be like that if we are not stepping up, right? And in music, we have this unique chance actually because we have proofs, audible proofs, that it was once on a different spiritual, emotional, whatever you call it, level. So if we lose that, then the AIs that we are building might maybe catch it on their own, but then it's on a level that we don't even comprehend anymore. But if we lose that already from the start, then we are lost anyway.
Yeah. And then anyway, it's not about how good of an artist you are, but what people are willing to pay for.
Yeah.
That's why...
And people are cheap. Okay.
That's another thing, yes. But maybe in terms of...
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you know, this is, if one goes through that topic, then one sees actually that due to AI tools and all the things, things become so much cheaper, so much easier to get, and you know, it's not expensive anymore, even money-wise or time-wise. That is cheap in a way, you know, emotionally cheap.
Yeah. Well, then yes, that's one thing. But what do you think will happen with music education?
Very good question. Quick answer, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I can only talk from my own perspective that professional musicianship is so difficult. In that sense, it takes so much physical power and motivation to go through, that exactly that motivation that we were talking about, whether people or musicians will keep having that motivation or not, is a key factor. If the motivation is not there, people will just get worse. And if people stay great, then it's again the question, technically or musically. Technically they will not, you know, against a chipped human being, they will anyway not compete. If we go that far in the future, then we say, okay, maybe education could be much, much quicker. You could maybe learn the whole of music history, the whole of music form, music theory within a week or less. But what you do then, have you really understood the stuff then? Because that's, for example, Sir Roger Penrose says that Gödel's theorem says actually that, I mean, whether he's right or not, we don't know, but he's on the other side of this, that he thinks that AI will not take over.
Yes.
Because simply Gödel's theorem says whether something is right or not depends on the rules that you can actually measure whether something is right or correct or not. Mm-hmm. And real consciousness comes from this, that he says that you have understood the rules and can sort of go beyond the rules in order to create something new, right?
Well, who knows what super intelligence would be capable of.
Of
this
course.
He cannot know, nobody knows that yet.
Of course, and I just say that as another point of view, that
Yes.
saying, okay, we human, we humans do have something superior, we just give it up. That's very much a possibility as well. I don't know what's true. I really don't. I'm on a search. I'm on a quest, as many people are at the moment.
Except for musicians, I feel. I don't think really that especially classical music circle thinks about these questions, because they do feel superior. We are great. We do great music of great composers, and nobody really cares about future. Just actually not much different from big tech companies. It's about quick benefit.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's really connected with what I said earlier, that classical music like went away from normal music in the 20th century as serious music and entertainment. I think we can go there again, because this is exactly this. People in classical music think they are better or nothing can happen to them, because they think still in these terms that we do serious music. We do the music that is actually, that there is nothing better in the world. And while I agree that these old compositions that you play are so amazing that actually, yes, there hasn't been something better really, we do lose the, as I said many times, the actual spiritual, emotional signature of these great compositions. So we are basically selling and reselling a skeleton or an empty body over and over again, and people don't realize anymore that they are just, selling something that is not anymore this what it.
And on top of that, classical music by default is always behind, and classical musicians are as well joking about it, that we are always 20 years behind. So they might not even realize before the ship is
Well, the positive thought here is that what I said earlier, if for example live performances or something, or we don't know how the market or how the humans will actually react if it would be for some miraculous reason.
No, but you know why I say that? Because I remember a situation, I will not mention a name here, but that was the year 2016, as far as I remember. So YouTube platform was already running for a long time, and that was nothing unusual to be on YouTube. And then I saw once an announcement, one well-established musician posted, older generation, or somebody from his team posted, "Digital revolution, Mr. Da-da-da is on YouTube." And that wasn't sarcastic. So it exactly underlined this being behind in terms of technological inventions or spinning further.
Yes.
In this classical music world.
You're completely right. What I wanted to say with that case, that might be that classical concerts or live concerts will become so much more important for people, because people get numb or don't like the AI stuff anymore, and then we go only humans and live. That could be the lucky scenario for classical musicians, actually, that the next 10, 20, 30 years they will actually still be very fine. But then again, it poses the problem.
Well, but 30 years is not much, you have basically two generations of students, and we're there. So what are they doing?
Yeah, I know. But I think this is why this is high time to actually go deeper as to what music actually is. In fact, this is funny because it goes sort of back to the religious music makers that did that for a higher purpose, and that maybe we have to go there again, that whether it's imagined or not, who knows, maybe a whole reality is imagined, but it might give us humans again the edge over machines, that we say, hey, wait a second, I want something better, something deeper. But this is not what classical music is doing at the moment. It's doing the opposite. So I think the lucky scenario that could happen, that live concerts are really important again for people.
Well, many people say they are still very much.
Yeah, they are. I mean, people go to classical concerts for sure, but I think they do that for different reasons than the music.
Well, Some not. Some do that
some,
for music.
but very, the
but
minority.
These subjects we covered already in the previous episodes.
Yeah, but this is important here because
yes,
because it always depends why people go to the concerts.
Why they like things. It's again, we are here talking about if they are even able to distinguish something that has been artificially made or not.
Exactly, and whether it will actually matter if they feel good afterwards.
Exactly. Yes.
So in that sense, it's really a we create something
philosophical question rather
that we cannot control. At the same time, we kind of dumbing down, let's say, our sensors and our understanding in many fields, not only music, and then we think that everything will be fine.
Yeah.
and it might be so, but we don't just simply no, it's a risky bet.
Going back to the beginning, the whole streaming business, let's put it this way, doesn't really help. It's in a way it's a great invention, but doesn't help because it exactly doesn't have this material feel that you can be attached to. This is how I see it. Do you think will the popularity of the profession, musicians, decrease because of technology? So there will be less space for music schools or for music instruments companies, for managers. That would be actually good.
Well, I mean, let's be real. I mean, the road ahead is bumpy, as we just laid out. AI is just either way. All these tools will flood the market, and it might get harder to make a living from music. As simple as that.
More frustrating.
And
I would say.
Exactly, and Corona was okay. It was a different problem, but some studies warned that already 1 in 4 musicians could lose serious income, and
musicians suffered quite a lot.
And because it's not only when you and I know that when we think about musicians, we also think about the first-rate top performers that people know that are soloists and so on. Mm-hmm. But don't forget that most of the musicians in the world are, and I don't mean it bad at all because they are so important, are more working jobs, like whether you are in the orchestra in Hollywood recording for the films, or you are orchestra musicians are a bit different because they play on stage, they are known and so, but there are many musicians that are just behind the doors, just do music for a living, to record or to create and stuff, and this will be tough.
Let alone bar musicians or bar pianists. I mean,
these are the
first
seen
ones.
Already in the restaurants that the self-playing pianos doing the job of dinner
of a pianist.
Music, and nobody had a problem with it.
No, it's just
they enjoyed it. It was even a good restaurant, right?
Yes.
So I mean, pricey one. Yeah. So people
and now put on top of that a real robot.
Yeah, it will be fun.
It's that's.
I know we also mentioned that already. I think in one of the episodes. But it's definitely a threat. I think that the earlier one gets aware of these things, the better, because you can still either be a change maker or adjust your career towards it. Not that you stop being a musician, but that you are smart about it. And
I would say especially these musicians that are now 20 years old, they really should think, or let's say in their 20s, they really should think about the future, because it will just shape differently. Absolutely.
And by change maker, I meant my personal hope and positive picture is that when the world is full of soulless AI tracks, that this human touch, this spiritual, this emotional stuff we always talk about, might actually rise again. This is my hope.
Hopefully.
But if that's happening or not, I don't know. It depends on the people.
And it also depends on the personalities, on the characters. This is what, again, we mentioned that in one of the episodes as well, but that musicians are really individual. Not only that they think that they are individual, that they really think, okay, am I different? Do I offer something special with my character, with this, what I'm saying, with this, what I'm doing? Because this keeps us different, so much different from machines.
I think so.
And if we are...
at least we are buying time this way.
Exactly.
So even with super intelligence, you know, also
Maybe,
these people
maybe
that,
not, of course.
people that want to sell
Yes.
this stuff are always optimistic. So sometimes 5 years become 50 years.
Yes,
You know, sometimes not.
I agree, but,
But
the speed that it's
yes, it
having
doesn't look
at the
good.
moment, if you compare this what was in this technological world 3 years ago or 5 years ago, has absolutely nothing to do with this what's now. And
Yeah.
this is really scary how quickly it can go.
It is. But it's a wake-up call for humans. And we certainly treat it this way. And we're doing a lot of things, not against AI, but to...
No, it's a great tool.
Exactly.
Again,
But to work with it and sort of help humans become more human. It's
Yes.
a stupid way to put it, but it's in a way
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah, that's true. And the profession of a musician is changing, and that change depends on us, on our choices, our thinking, and our priorities, how we see things and how we comprehend them. It also depends on whether we simply go with the flow without much thought, or if we are brave enough to analyze and question. I believe, and you probably will agree with me here, that only by choosing the latter, so analyzing and questioning, we can, as humans, gain a clear, or at least clearer vision of the future and participate in shaping it the way we want.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better.